Hi, my name's Steve Dalby,
I'm Marijn.
and this is WhiskyAtEase.
Chill. Hi everyone, welcome at our second episode of WhiskyAtEase. My name is Marijn.
And my name is Steve Dalby.
And if you missed our first episode, here's a quick rundown of what happened.
Previously on episode 1.
Whiskies.
Whiskey.
So many great stories that we can tie to these whiskies. Start off.
We started a journey. We started in West Scotland at a place called Tobermory. And this is what we tasted. This is the Tobermory 12-year-old non-peated whiskey. And we're going to link it to this. That is our destination today. But before we get there, this is like chess, isn't it?
I'll take your pawn and you'll take the...
You need to be aware that this is the leche. In Scottish brogue, if you go to a bar in Scotland and you want to taste this, you ask for a leche. If you go to a shop anywhere else, you say, do you have a bottle of Ledaig? This is their peated version of the whiskey. Still 1798, etc., etc. But there's this story to this. And it starts with a company called Gordon and MacPhail. And what they do is they buy spirit from the distilleries around the world.
So the new make.
Yep, the new make. And then they choose their own barrels. So they don't buy a barrel. They take their high quality barrels that they believe is correct. They take the high quality spirit and then they create their own whiskey. And that's how this is created. So this is from their Discovery range, which is the low end. Jay, needless to say, Gordon and MacPhail can get very, very expensive.
They can, absolutely, yes.
But this is Ledaig. So our link then takes us not into a distiller's, but into an independent bottler. And it's worth remembering that these people know what they're talking about. They're 125 years old this year in 2020.
Cool.
So they've been knocking around for a long time.
Yeah. So will we get some like celebratory bottles coming out maybe?
Not that you and I can afford.
Probably not. Exactly. Yeah.
They have their exclusive range and they have their reserves. Of course they do.
Would they have a 150-year-old barrel somewhere?
I don't doubt it. Would a barrel last that long? That's a great question. I don't know the answer.
Oh, that's no. Next time on episode 3. No, okay. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Well, let's take this comment. I love Gordon and MacPhail. I'm interested in independent bottlers. I mean, I have a few here in the connection. I'm not going to pull them together and pull them out. And some are good and some are bad. You need to be very careful with them because you've got no history with an independent bottler.
Exactly. While you would get something like the Tobermory, for example, this is something that they've been doing year after year, barrel after barrel, bottle after bottle. It's always the same thing.
Yes, it's consistency. That's what That's what you buy.
Exactly.
Whereas if you take this one here from Village and Mallet, this is an awesome, an Irish.
Mr. Biden, a quick word from the BBC. The BBC, I'm Irish.
Whiskey, but it's from a very small number of barrels that they have in their bonded warehouse. So you end up with something that obviously is very, very high quality and taste, but in terms of consistency, you're never quite sure what you're
getting.
But if you like whiskey generally, that's not a bad thing, and it's a great way to experience new flavours. But let's talk about Gordon and MacPhail. If you go to their website, you'll see a wonderful mission statement that says, "Future is shaped by what we do today, but today reveals by what we did in the past." And
that sounds like a tattoo.
It does.
It sounds like my next tattoo. Yes, exactly.
But it's absolutely right. So, as I said to you before, they went to Tobermory, they buy a spirit, they put it in their own barrels and they mature it. And they're responsible for that maturation. And the first time they did this because they had a grocer's store that sold whiskey, but their customers wanted more. And in those days, you distilled, you threw it in a barrel for the minimum number of years, and you sold it as quick as you could, because that's how the distillery made money. But of course, a bit like antiques, if you want something to gain in value and gain in depth, you need to keep it for a long time. And John Urquhart, who was the founder of Gordon MacPhail, he wasn't actually the founder, but he was one of the early directors.
I was gonna say that the founders would be someone named Gordon and
MacPhail,
someone
yes.
that would be, yeah.
So he was on board and basically kind of did a takeover in the early days. But he basically was the first person to consider that keeping whiskey in a barrel and maturing it in that maturation process would add value. And I think it was Glenfiddich. I may be wrong, and I may need to just double check that. But he actually took 8 barrels of
Glenfiddich.
no, I'm trying to think what was in the barrel before. It was bourbon barrels, I think, or it was a different finish anyway, and basically set them up for the first sort of final fill barrel of whiskey. And that started
Final
off...
filled barrel of
Yes.
whiskey. Wow, okay.
And that got the whole process started. And of course, they eventually got their own bonded warehouse where they basically then saved them for a number of years.
Okay.
So that's this process. So for 125 years, these guys have been taking a whiskey, and it's not the same whiskey. Even though the spirit that came in this Ledaig bottle here and this Ledaig bottle here came from the same distillers, it was matured differently by different people in a different process, which means you do get different whiskies.
In a different area as well.
Correct, because we started in the west here, but now we've travelled to a place called Elgin, Elgin, which is very close to Inverness in Scotland. So we've gone east. That is our link. From the Tobermory distillery, they created their peated whiskey. Somebody from Gordon and MacPhail bought the spirit, barreled it themselves in their own barrels and matured it, and after 12 years they put it into a bottle and sold it as part of their discovery range. You can't get this anymore. It's all done. So this
Of course, because that's part of the thing. Like, you don't have that consistency.
Nope.
You just buy a few barrels, you make something out of that. At some point you decide, this is an awesome product, let's release it. But if that's released and it's all sold, then
you can't
it's
repeat
gone.
the process. So it's gone.
gone. Yeah.
So
Awesome.
that's second part of our journey from
Okay.
the west coast of Tobermory into an independent bottler called Gordon and MacPhail, who've been doing this for 125 years. The only thing we need to do now is
Have a
taste
taste.
it.
Exactly. So, let's grab 2 glasses. I would say we only need a little bit, because this is a finite number of spirit.
Yeah, I guess I'm generous.
I know you are. I know you are. Just that tiny bit for me. I just don't want to spoil it all for you. That's all.
You ready for this?
I am very much.
All right,
Yes.
cool.
Oh my.
We both like peated whiskies anyway. What you tend to find with an independent bottled whiskey is that it's more subtle and refined, because somebody actually takes care of the whiskey. It's not part of a big process that they're doing every single day. As a bottler, they've bought that whiskey, they've put it in their barrels, and away
There's a
they go.
plan.
Kind of, but there's a plan just for this bottle, just for this range. So when Gordon and MacPhail bought out the Discovery range, they also have a connoisseur range, and they have a reserve range. So they've actually thought just about this particular brand. Where, of course, if we take Tobermory or even any of the other commercial whiskies here, the plan, of course, is to keep producing them and to become normal and natural.
And to be consistent as
The
well.
Glenlivet
And
down
with
there,
this,
you know. Exactly.
just go crazy on that one barrel. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we have our chart, but we'll worry about that later. Oh man.
Here.
Oh yes. Enjoy the odour. Enjoy the nose. Enjoy the smell. It's
Oh
beautiful,
my
isn't it?
tiki ticker. Oh,
Now, we have to tell you, we are biased towards a peated whiskey.
we are.
Okay.
That is true.
So we can't argue with that. So when you see us getting orgasmic over this nose, then it's because that peatiness there is so refined. It's not heavy smoke. It literally is. Peat is a better description.
It is, exactly. And that also, like, in last episode when we were tasting the Tobermory, I do get that sour notes here as well, even with the peaty.
Maybe you just have a soury nose day today.
Maybe.
Because I get citrus in here. The
Yes.
peaty citrus is...
Maybe sour notes is better described as citrusy.
And I find those kind of two ends of the scale. So something, maybe it depends which nostril you're sticking it up. There you go. Is it different?
I've got less nose hair on this side, so that makes it better.
Oh, this is a delicious.
It is. I just love that, and I just love the color as well. So it's definitely not as ambery as the Tobermory.
No, I think this is because whatever they put this in, it was more a bourbon cask than a sherry or port cask. And my guess is it's a first fill. So I don't know. I've tried to find out, and I actually couldn't find out. Doesn't actually say on the label as well. So I don't know what barrel they put it in. But that's also something associated with these kind of independent bottlers. You don't have that history of the product.
I just had a
the
taste.
look of contentment.
Oh my god!
Why don't you tell everybody what you think? Because it's not obvious from your face.
It isn't.
No.
No, this is spectacular. It from the start off until that not super long finish.
Oh, I don't know. Mine is still going.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, we talked about the Tobermory in the last episode about the consistent finish. Here, the finish is developing. It's fading away very slowly and turning into those lemon citrus notes. So on the finish, you get that peaty back of the throat. You know, as it sort of the smoke, which is very common of Ledaig. I mean, we know the original Ledaig. This smoke kind of appears, but on this particular one, it's more subtle than that. But that it changes from smoke, and then that citrus starts to come out the front, and it's still sitting there in the back, but it's not heavy. But that's what I would call a complex finish. It's changing over time.
That is very true. Yeah.
So less of the fruits, but that's because there's more smoke in this.
Of course, yeah, that kind of overpowers, but in a good way, of course. So that is something that we both like. Also still very oily in here.
Well, it's a little bit like everything. It's a little bit of like a bag of crisps. You know, a bag of crisps with a full fat bag of crisps.
Life is like a bag of crisps. Yes. Okay.
But you know, if you have a low fat bag of crisps with less fat in it, there's less flavour in there.
That's true.
So a whiskey that's kind of showing that oiliness is going to have a longer finish, and it is going to have more depth in terms of its complexity and flavours. Same with the wine. So it's exactly what we go with the red wine.
So I do get a bit of apples out of the oven, cinnamon a little bit. Not that much of cinnamon, but the apples that you, how do you call that? Stew in the oven? No, not really, but
stewed fruits, I guess, is or the apples. Yeah, I get a touch of apples in there. I just like this. It's really difficult to describe a complex whiskey to people in certain words. Exactly. Because you can't. There are a number of flavours.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're still there. Sorry about it. Yeah, it's
no, it's true. I also get a little bit of that hospital smell in the taste.
I like this. I think the colour, as we've talked about, is that kind of yellow, light amber. You know, it's typical of a bourbon oak cask. I don't even know whether that's there, but definitely on the oaky side, which gives it a lighter colour. The smoothness, it's very light. It's very smooth.
It is very smooth. Although it does pack a punch as well.
It does.
With that peaty flavour, but it is overall very smooth whiskey.
But I think it's a kind of 4 or a 5 on the smoother scale. It's not got that kind of harsh, spicy stuff that a 9 or a 10 whiskey would have in the smoothness scale. So it is definitely on the smooth scale. But there's not a lot of vanilla there, so it's not a lot of sweetness.
No, it does have a little bit of salty undertone.
It does. I agree.
Yeah.
And you get that one fruit for me. I know you kind of had that stewed fruit, but the citrus flavour, that lemon, if there's any fruit there, it's that. It's subtle, it's very specific. It's a very refined whiskey, from the smoke to the citrusness, to the way that comes together. And of course, on a smoky, subtle smoky flavour, it's kind of around the 7 or 8. It's not a Lafrague or a Optimal kind of smokiness. It's the kind of smokiness that is part of the experience, as opposed to the lead performer.
True. Yes.
And that, of course, leads into this wonderful finish, which develops. So you move from a smoky finish through to a citrus, lemony, kind of really lemony finish. But it takes, 10 seconds, 15 seconds for it to arrive, and you can enjoy it. And it's not like the Tobermory from the last episode where you go, okay, time for me to taste this again. This is all encompassing. When you take a drink of this complexity, take a whiskey of this complexity, it goes through those stages, from that nose and that expectation, that smokiness lingering in the background, through those sort of citrusy fruit flavours and that smokiness that sort of hovers over the top of the tongue, and then the finish kind of reverts back to that fruit. It's a journey as you taste this.
It is.
It's wonderful.
It's a discovery.
It's a
That's
discovery.
true. Yes.
Nice link.
Yes. It's an introduction to the impressive portfolio. True.
Yeah, that's the sales stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Gordon and MacPhail,
Awesome.
absolutely successful in terms of the way that they deliver this whiskey. They look after it and nurture it. They take that spirit, they put it in their own barrels so that they have full control over what happens to it in terms of their warehouse, in terms of them looking after it. And I highly recommend it. It's not the cheapest whiskey you're going to buy, but by a long way. This discovery, this introduction to an independent bottler, it's not going to break the bank. And guaranteed, you'll think it's worth every single cent, euro or penny that you spend on it. As you can see from my perspective, it's been a popular drink. It is very, very nice. And, you know, it's different for other smoky whiskies that you would taste. It's better. It actually has an elegance about it that is not just about the smoke. It's actually about the flavour wheel that actually is associated with it. I love this. I think it's really, really nice.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. If you would take the old Ledaig or the normal Ledaig, the default one, and you compare it with that, there's just a big taste difference. No.
Yeah, well, one of us must.
Well, yes. Then just a tiny drop then. If you compare these two, you don't. There's so much difference in these two. There's so much difference that barrel does.
That's true. There's no fruity tones on this.
No. Here in the default Ledaig, you still have that peatiness that is running the whole show.
Hey,
you don't have that
that's pretty
peatiness
good.
as a supporting actor into the orchestra and the symphony
No,
of
you don't.
mouth pleasure. It is just that peatiness, which I don't think it's a bad thing. I just love that default Ledaig.
That is the best smoke peated whiskey that I ever taste. It is absolutely delicious. But this is a complex peated whiskey.
Yes.
This has a level of authority about it that this just doesn't have. So you have to wonder, if I was the master blender of this product, would I want it to turn into this? Or are they really different?
The question is,
I'm gonna put
would
this
you
away.
be able to?
I don't know. And that's where the expertise is, isn't it? That's where 125 years of experience of that maturation process. The people that kind of invented and said, hey, if we put it in a barrel and we mature it long enough, it will turn into something that's more complex, because that's what our customers wanted. And that's what Gordon and MacPhail did. I made a note in my notes. I can just reach over here. And they established the principles of maturation. That's what they did. When they set this up They basically said, look, if we put it in a barrel and we leave it long enough and we do this with it, then we're going to end up with this output and our customers are going to be happier. And I think it's a real success. Okay,
Yeah.
that is the Ladaig, where we started our journey. It's the smoky version from the Tobermory distillery. And then we provide it and we give it to Gordon and MacPhail that basically say we can get more out of this spirit by being careful with it, by treating it with a different kind of respect, by putting it in a different kind of barrel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's unique and it's not something that you're going to be able to get years and years and years later, because basically they'll move on to something else. It will disappear. I'm not going to recreate and keep buying the spirit. And to be fair, if I was a distiller, I'm not sure I'd want to keep giving somebody else that
No, it's
spirit.
true. Yeah.
But now and again, to make something special, that's what I think we have here. We have a special, and that's the next part of our journey. So we've gone from the distiller, we've taken that spirit and we've treated it with a little bit of respect, with a company that is an independent bottler. But it's still only part of our journey. We have the third bottle to taste.
So
And
we're halfway,
we're 2/3 of the way.
2/3 of the way.
So if you want to work out how we get from this one to this one, that is episode 3.